All right. And sharing my slides. And hopefully everybody can see that okay. I won't be able to go back and forth too much, given that I can't see everyone on my own screen. So thanks everyone for joining today, especially over your lunch hour. I know that was precious time for everyone, so thank you so much for joining. As you noticed, today will be a provider webinar supporting youth in vaping cessation. If you would put in the chat how you found out about the webinar, that would be great. All right. So today we're going to go over vaping, and I will say that's about vaping nicotine. So the information that we cover today is not going to apply to vaping cannabis or THC. We'll also go over how do we help youth quit vaping, some of Quit Now services, and how Quit Now can support you. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions. So who am I? My name is Beth. I go by the pronouns she, her. I'm currently the manager of behavioral coaching and outreach at Quit Now, which is hosted at BC Lung Foundation in downtown Vancouver. I have a background in public health and health coaching with a focus on health promotion. I'm identify as a settler to Canada of European descent, and I live in today what's known as Burnaby. So before we get going, just going to do a brief land acknowledgement. So we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and other nations throughout what is known as BC, or British Columbia. And I know that many of you are joining from other parts that are not the Lower Mainland. So we honor the stewards of the land for time immemorial and are grateful to live, work, and play on these lands today. If you're able to, you can put in the chat where you're calling in from today. So now we'll just go over a brief kind of a 101 on what is vaping. So what is a vape? A vape is also known as an electronic cigarette or an e-cigarette. And it has just a few of these different pieces to it. The mouthpiece, a cartridge that holds the e-juice that usually contains the nicotine or other substances, the heating element, and a battery. And it can look at a variety of different formats. This is just an example. So there are two main types of vapes out there, the disposables and refillables. Disposables are single-use products that can be rechargeable, and this is nowadays the most commonly used device. We also have refillable devices. That takes a lot more upkeep. So people like them, the folks that like to do tricks like bigger clouds, things like that, but because it takes more upkeep, it's usually for folks that do it as a hobby. There are a lot of brands out there nowadays, so I'm not going to cover what those are, but I will mention that the industry comes out with more and more devices all the time. So we have some that have video games embedded into the vape device. They're actually fairly cheap, so kids can access them because they're so cheap. And then there's a lot of brands out there that are marketed by entertainers and influencers. So this is just a quick quiz time. Which one of these two do you think is the vape? And you can go ahead and put that in the chat.
Okay. Probably.
So I'm seeing a lot of answers. Seems like a lot of B's and some A's. So the actual answer is the A. And it's so tricky. These both look like just average everyday office supplies that you could find at school or at work. So it's just important to be diligent to look out for these things because they look like everyday common things. So what's inside of a vape? There's a lot of different things inside the vape. So we have nicotine, which is the one we're talking about today. There's often heavy metals, nickel, tin, and lead. There's other unknown chemicals we haven't figured out what they are yet. That comes from the heating of the e-liquid. Some of the flavors we found have more chemicals than others that are harmful. And we also know that nicotine itself is highly addicting and it hits the brain within 7 to 10 seconds. It's more addictive than alcohol or cannabis, and it can be harder to quit than heroin or cocaine. So I do have another question for you. True or false? One vape pod can contain as much nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. What do you think? Everybody is getting it right. So yes, it is true. A vape pod can contain as much or even more nicotine than a pack of cigarettes, which is 20 cigarettes. Um, this is why it might be a little tricky when we're telling people to switch from smoking to vaping as like a nicotine replacement therapy, because oftentimes what's in the nicotine liquid, or sorry, the e-liquid might be more than what it says, or yeah, there's just different concentrations. So it's a lot harder to figure out than just a regular cigarette. So now I'll go into youth nicotine use statistics. So as mentioned in advertising for this provider webinar today, Canada has one of the highest rates of youth vaping in the world. 1 in 7 youth in Canada vapes regularly, and BC has an even higher rate than that national average with 1 in 6 youth. So this is something that's pretty alarming and why we're trying to address it today. Some trends in youth nicotine use. Over the last 5+ years, we have seen that youth smoking is going down, but youth vaping has gone up and remains consistently high. Among the youth and young adult vaping rates, here's just some examples of what's going on in these populations. So in the ages 15 to 19 group, 77% are daily use. It's higher with 10% daily use in the 20 to 24 category. And then those age 25 and above is just at 5% right now. Another question. So what do you think is one of the top reasons that youth vape today? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Stress. You guys are expert, you know all the things. Awesome. Yep, a lot of the things you're mentioning are very true. So that's exactly it. So some of the reasons that youth vape, as you said, fitting in socially, peer pressure, there's so much stress and mental health issues nowadays. So it's another way that people are coping. Of course, there's the experimentation with the different flavors, different styles, and boredom. And then just youth-friendly marketing and packaging, which really appeals to youth with all the colorful colors and the designs and everything. It's interesting that smoking and vaping is starting to become cool again. Many musicians and movie stars and other influencers are showing smoking in their videos and their lyrics, so that might be a draw as well. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the health consequences of vaping. Similar to what we're finding with smoking cigarettes, some of those are same with vaping. Of course, we're still learning, but nicotine addiction is one, damaging the blood vessels, increased risk of heart disease and other heart-related conditions, oral health issues, of course, things affecting the lungs, whether it's infections or different types of diseases. And so we're still learning about these long-term negative consequences from vaping. But what we do know is that this population of youth and young adults, it's particularly a risk for them because their brain is still in development before the age of 25, and sometimes could be a little bit longer than that. They're more susceptible to the effects of nicotine. So it's affecting their brain because it's in that developmental stage, which means that it's an increased risk of addiction over their lifetime. Some other things that could happen is mood disorders, problems with impulse control, attention and memory. And so those are all important because this is such a pivotal part of their lives where they're developing and growing and learning. So it's important to keep them away from vaping nicotine. Another thing that's of note is dual use. So dual use means when cigarettes and vapes are used at the same time. So it's kind of alarming that a quarter of youth are vaping while also smoking. And youth who vape are 3 to 4 more times more likely to start smoking. So it can be seen as kind of that gateway drug into nicotine addiction in various forms, right? And then dual use also carries higher health risks from just using one of the products, so a higher risk for stroke and respiratory diseases. So what are some ways that we can consider to help youth quit vaping? Youth have expressed in a variety of different surveys that they have a desire to quit. 59% of youth said that they've tried to make a quit attempt in the previous years. And 76% of youth have said that they're really interested in quitting or reducing their vaping. So just some of the tips that we have for talking to youth about vaping. We encourage people to use a behavioral support type model. So we're client-centered approach. Clients can lead their own care. You working with them, just focusing on what are some of their experiences that they're dealing with. So more specifically, just asking a variety of questions, kind of in a motivational interviewing format. Ask specifically why, consider some of their social context, maybe ask if their friends have vaped or if there's any tobacco use at their homes. You could also ask about their stress levels, what's currently stressing them out, whether that's schoolwork or friends or something else. Another important thing to discuss would be stress management tools, because as we know, vaping is often a coping mechanism for stress. So mentioning things like breathing or meditation or some sort of movement. But I also just want to mention that in general, it does take time for youth to trust others. So being empathetic, non-judgmental, supportive, and encouraging can go a long way to helping build those connections with youth. And also it's important to note that having social support from providers, family members, or other people is a vital key to helping them make those quit attempts. So I just briefly want to go over what is Quit Now and what are some ways that it can support you. So if you don't know, Quit Now is the free tobacco cessation program here in BC, helping people to reduce or quit their tobacco or e-cigarette use, delivered by BC Long on behalf of the government. Our services are free. Anybody can use them at any time for however long they need, open to anyone 10 and above. So some of the Quit Now services that we have are listed here. I'm not going to go over all of them today since we have such a short time together, but just wanted to say that several of these are very helpful for working with youth. So the first one I'll mention is behavioral coaching. So you can get support from an expert quit coach. They work with people one-on-one, so that could be through the phone or through live chat. Phone is usually one-on-one appointments scheduled at the frequency that the person wants. They can meet you wherever you're at in your journey, whatever stage of contemplation, or if you're ready to quit or you've already quit and you want to stay with some support. And I'll mention that all those services are available in different translations, so up to 100 different languages we support. And we also do monthly group support sessions online in a webinar style. So we have different topics, things like harm reduction, stress relief, things like that, that could be helpful as well. And some other things we've developed specifically to support youth would include our new mini site. It's designed with input from youth. So therefore it's very interactive, it's got gamification, there's a variety of different quizzes youth can take, and mentions things like nicotine addiction, what is that, how would you save money? There's guides to quit or reduce for youth as well as for caregivers and other providers. And then just coping skills that they can work through. So how can Quit Now support you specifically? As I mentioned, we have a variety of different resources, extensive lists of evidence-based resources. And so this is just an example here, some about vaping. What's nice is that a lot of our vaping is in those translated languages that we have, things like Arabic, Chinese, Farsi. And we also recently did our 1 hour long group support session that was on the topic of nicotine pouches and vaping in July. So we have all of our webinars that we've done in the past online as well to reference back to. So as a healthcare provider, if you're looking to expand your knowledge about how to support clients in their cessation journey, we do have training available, and that would be in the form of Quit Now Live. We also do custom presentations. So we've done them for dental students and others, focusing on the areas of your practice. So the upcoming Quit Now Live workshops are just coming up really soon here. So there's 2 that will take place next week, and then the following week there's another set. So to do them, you have to do two-hour training sessions. And after this, I can send out links to that in case you're interested in signing up. And then finally, just gonna talk a little bit about referrals. So if you're interested in referring your clients to us for any of our services, you can do so by fax or online. In the future, one of our big wishes is to do a provider portal just to make it simplified for both yourselves and ourselves and just have a streamlined process for everyone. So with that is the time for questions. So if there's any questions at this time, I'll go ahead and stop sharing and just let me know. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and you can unmute and just ask your question if you have any.
Hi, Beth. Thank you for the presentation. Are the group sessions more geared towards adults, or do you have specific teen ones?
I don't think we have it specifically geared towards an age. It's more topical, like I said. So the one that's coming up next is cancer care. So I assume that that's probably going to appeal more to an older age set, but it does talk about how to prevent cancer in the future too. So, but yeah, I mean, the whole list of the different topics is online, so you can see which ones are upcoming.
Okay. And do you ever get asks from schools to do parent advisory council meetings, or is that an option for your team?
I would love that, honestly.
Because we get
But
some evening sessions they want to host online, and our presentation, we're tobacco and vapor reduction coordinators, isn't really designed for an online platform, but I could see this presentation fitting really well. So good to
yeah, I
know.
have one that's similar to this. It's like a 15-minute presentation I can give as well. So yeah, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Yes, patrons can also self-refer on the website, so that's totally fine as well. Is there anything else that you have found in your practice that might help youth that I didn't mention today that might help other people?
We do have some youth using nicotine replacement therapy through the BC Smoking Cessation program.
Mhm.
Sometimes it can be an access barrier if the pharmacist isn't willing to give it to them for vaping
Right.
cessation, but many
Mhm.
are. So
Okay.
we just warn kids, youth that are looking for that option that there might be a barrier and that one pharmacy may say no and another may say yes, but we do have quite a few youth using it and accessing it.
Mhm.
So
If youth go to a pharmacy and they have some sort of referral from their doctor, is the pharmacist like required to fill it or
to be honest, I think it's a clinical decision by the
just okay.
pharmacist, but that
Okay.
may help. But I
Mhm.
don't think many will have the doctor's note. I think they just go in.
In
Yeah.
themselves. Okay, good to know. If somebody asks about the one-on-one phone support, do they have the same person? Generally, yes, you would have the same person working with you throughout your time. Usually the sessions are about 15 to 20 minutes. I have seen that, for example, if somebody's out on vacation, they'll ask the client, would you prefer to wait for me to come back, or do you want to stay on schedule and talk with somebody else so they have that choice?
Mm.
Great, any more questions? As far as I'm aware, I don't think you have to give your personal health number for support. I can look into that further though.
I believe they'll look it up. So it's if you don't bring it, but they do need to tie it. So because other out of province and out of country people would then be able to
That's
access.
true.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, well, if there's no more questions, thank you for joining today, and I will send some links in a follow-up email about a couple of things that I mentioned today. So thank you so much for joining, and yeah, if you have any ideas for future sessions that would be helpful for you in your practice, just let me know. So have a great day. Happy Halloween.